Thanks, Dave. I'd like to call the Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, October 16th. Come to order, and would everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Michelle, could we have roll call, please?
Paul Olivas,
Present.
Charles Reno,
Here.
Dagny Stapleton, here. Kevin Weisky,
Here.
Jason Woosley, Doug Hoffman.
Here. Thank you. I was waiting for this next one, but I guess we don't have a next one. Public comment. Next item on the agenda. This item is for either public comments or for public comments on an action item. If commenting on an action item, please place the agenda item on the request to speak form. Is there any public comments? Okay, are you Rebecca?
That's me.
Okay. Is this on the case number?
TXT 14-000.
Okay, could I wait
I can
until
wait.
that comes
Absolutely.
up on?
Yeah.
Okay, great,
Thanks.
thank you. So seeing no other public comments, I'll close public comments. City Council liaison report.
I have nothing tonight.
All right. Presentation and possible discussions report regarding Regional Transportation Commission, Virginia Street Corridor Investment Plan. Amy Cummings. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you very much. I appreciate being able to come here today and talk to you about the Virginia Street Plan. I know it's in one of the TODs, and you've done a lot of work on the TODs, and I know Virginia Street is near and dear to everyone's heart here. So what I'm hoping to do is show some of the draft concepts that we have and get your feedback and your opinions on those as we move forward. We're going to try to complete the study early next year and have some design concepts to improve several segments of the Virginia Street corridor. And I wanted to start with just looking back to the Regional Transportation Plan guiding principles. And I think the alternatives that we're going to look at for Virginia Street really address all of these options of promoting safety and economic development and sustainability. And you may recall as well, out of the Regional Transportation Plan, we developed a vision for transit, and one key piece of that was extending the rapid. And you can see the solid green line is where the rapid operates today, and the green dashed lines going up to UNR and then down to the summit in the south are what was proposed for our vision for that. So that's why this corridor study is so long. It looks at almost the entire length of Virginia Street because we wanted to address that transit connectivity component. And we found that a lot of people don't realize that we have over 7,000 trips every day on the rapid or in the Virginia Street corridor. So it's about over 20% of the trips happening on Virginia Street are on a bus. So it makes a big difference to mobility in that particular corridor. So this is a map that shows you the full length of it. We go up from UNR, McCarran in the north, all the way to the summit. And it's really about 3 studies within a study. We've got some specific options we're looking at that are very unique to UNR and the land use there. We're looking at some options that are specific to Midtown and addressing some of the sidewalk connectivity issues and safety concerns there. And then when we get to the very far south end of the corridor, where it's the 6-lane, 50-mile-an-hour speed limit, we have some other safety design options that we wanted to share with you. So our options for UNR are really trying to be in tune with the city's policy of developing a university town feel. So we want to connect those students to all of the businesses and restaurants and employment opportunities throughout Virginia Street and the rest of the community. And we also think it'll be a huge boost for our transit ridership to link in directly to the 20,000 plus students and faculty and staff. And of course, for economic development, to link UNR to more of the resorts in the corridor for just making it easier for visitors to travel throughout the region. So this zooms in kind of to the Lawler area, and you can see one of our station concepts is going to be right there in front of Lawler. That's Virginia Street, kind of going north and south. Let's see if this has a mouse. Okay, so this is Virginia Street, and this is Lawler. This is the street coming out of the parking garage. So our idea here is to have a rapid station in this general vicinity and construct a roundabout, and the bus would then just kind of turn around and go back south. So that would be essentially the end of the route. But in talking with folks here at the city and UNR, I think there's a lot of interest in this because you could do a design sort of gateway treatment with a roundabout, and you also slow people down as they're coming south down that hill. And it could improve the traffic flow for people coming out of that garage. So I think this has a lot of safety benefits and traffic operation benefits as well, as being an efficient way to turn the bus around and go back south. We do have some other concepts. These are all very preliminary. I wanted to get them to you just for your response. We're really excited to be working with UNR in the city on the campus master plan, which is not going to start until next year. So these concepts are going to roll forward into that campus master plan. The locations might be refined a little bit. We want to make sure that any station designs are compatible with UNR architecture, and we're really looking forward to getting started with that. So this is kind of a starting point, but it's going to be refined over the next, I would say, 9 months or so. The rapid stations are about half a mile apart. So we wanted one at Lawler, so you're up there near the library and the student union, but also one down around 10th Street to serve that southern portion of the campus. And here, we have looked at some roundabout concepts too, but what we've seen the most positive feedback for is a bus stop right here, consolidating these crosswalks so that you just have one crosswalk here with a pedestrian activated signal. So it would be a traffic light that would be over the road, but it would just be for pedestrians. So what we've heard from a lot of folks is it's kind of confusing because you stop here and people walk across the street and you start going, and then you're stuck in the middle and more people are walking across the street. So we think that would make it a little bit more efficient for people driving and trying to walk across. We are also, I don't have any designs here to look at it, but we're also going to be looking at some gateway design options between I-80 and 9th Street. So that's kind of your first impression of the university as you come off of I-80. And we don't really have any concepts to show you yet, but we're going to be exploring some ideas for that area as part of a gateway concept too. The next set of options that I have to show you focus on Midtown. And as you know, it's a very narrow right-of-way. It's a very uneven right-of-way. It's, kind of goes in and out. 60 feet is kind of our tightest pinch point. So that's what we've designed our options for, knowing that there's some areas where it's a little bit wider. We could have wider sidewalks where there's more right-of-way, which we would certainly want to encourage. And right now, we don't have any bicycle facilities on Virginia Street, and there's limited parking. That's another thing we've heard is people want more bike racks. And I know that the city is working on a policy to make it easier for private landowners to install their own bicycle racks. And of course, we've been to many of your meetings where parking has been discussed at length as well, so we know that that's certainly an issue. And I wanted to touch on bikes a little bit more. This is an excerpt from the Bicycle Pedestrian Master Plan that was adopted in 2011 by RTC. So you can see, we have the bicycle route on Holcomb, which is sort of parallel to Virginia Street, but there's nothing on Virginia Street and there's nothing in the plan for that. However, that's been one of the things that's come up quite a bit at our public outreach events is that people would like to see bicycle lanes or some sort of enhanced bicycle facilities. And in addition to Virginia Street, I think improving the bicycle connections on the east-west routes to Virginia Street would be helpful, as well as more bike parking. If you had sort of a consolidated bike parking area where people could then walk a block or two to their final destination, that would be something to explore. So this is our first option, and in a lot of ways, this might be a most practical first step. It's very similar to what's out there today. You have the center turn lane. The lanes are shrunk down a little bit from 13 feet to 11 feet. but it has one lane in each direction, which is what we have today, as well as maintaining the on-street parking where it exists today, but it would allow us to do a 5.5-foot sidewalk. And that is really, where we need to be in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. We're going to push for wider sidewalks where we can. This is, I think, the narrowest that they would be. And then if there are opportunities where it's wider or where there's room, even in the private right-of-way, I know there might be an interest in people expanding the sidewalks onto their property. We've also had some people suggest that they might want to forego the parking spaces in front of their building and have a wider sidewalk so that you could have sort of a plaza feel or have additional tables or street furniture. So those would certainly be options. The next option does not have the on-street parking, but it does have bicycle lanes. And this is something that we wanted to be responsive to the comments we'd received for bicycle lanes. It's difficult to fit all of them in this narrow section. So under this scenario, you would not be able to have the on-street parking. And then our third option, you do not have the center turn lane, but you do have on-street parking and sidewalks and the bicycle lane. The drawback with this is that unless you eliminated the ability to make left turns, you'd have traffic backing up behind people who are turning left. And you also have a higher probability to have rear-end collisions if you don't have that center turn lane. The main benefit with that is it keeps the cars traveling a little bit farther away from each other, so it reduces your risk for accidents and crashes. So these are the three options that we've looked at and are getting public comment on currently. And then as you move to the far south end of the corridor, south of Patriot in the South Meadows area, right now we have 6 lanes and speed limits between 50 and 55 miles an hour, depending on where you are in that section. I'm sure you're all familiar. We've had some fatal crashes in that section, one just a few weeks ago. It's very high speeds and very low traffic volumes. We have about 13,000 cars a day, which is pretty low for a 6-lane section. So as NDOT did their road safety audit, they asked us to look at reconfiguring that with 2 lanes in each direction and see what you had room to do. So here you see, and this would be sort of an ultimate build-out option that would require some reconstruction to have a median, 2 lanes in each direction, another median, and then a separate, what we call multimodal lane, which could be bicycles or buses, and they could travel in that lane and be separated from the rest of traffic, and then sidewalks, because it's a very wide right-of-way, so you have a lot of flexibility in what would be there. And then a lower cost option done essentially with paint instead of the raised median, so your construction costs would be much lower. This could be done through the slurry seal program. Would be essentially the same configurations of 2 lanes in each direction, and then the shared bus and bike lane without the raised median as a separator. It would just be painted as a buffer. And I did also want to get the word out that we are having a transit summit on December 6th, and that's going to be a community dialogue about the role that transit plays in the community and how do we want to move that forward. So we hope that you will all join us for that. So that is an overview of the concepts that we have to date, and I welcome any suggestions or comments that you have.
Any comments, Commissioner?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Weisky, I have a comment, or not a comment, excuse me, it's a question, and it's probably for legal. John? If we go to these seminars, like the one that Amy just showed us for December 6th, or any of the other neighborhood meetings, as planning commissioners, can we participate in them, or should we not be attending them so that we're not influenced in our decision-making process? How does legal look at it, or do we not need to worry about it?
A full planning commission is 7. Yes.
Turn this on. Sean Cadlick, Reno City Attorney. You know, if 1 or 2 of you go, as long as less than a quorum go, that's fine. If you're going to have, if you know that there are going to be, since there's 7 planning commissioners and 4 of you are going to go to this thing, then we need to know that. And what we will do is we would put a notice saying that there may be a quorum of planning commissioners attending this event. And we've done that with other events, for example, out at the convention center when they did some business thing where it was potentially going to be more than 3 city council members. We just post a notice that there may be more than, there may be a quorum of planning commissioners attending, and they will be taking no action at that. They're merely there to participate. So that's not a problem as long as we know that you're going to have 4 or more there. So
Okay,
we can
and
do
can
that.
we,
Even if you think you're not sure, but you think we can just post a notice that you're going to come, so it'll come.
okay, and then can we participate in question and answers?
Oh, sure.
Okay, very
That's
good,
just-
thank you.
You're gathering information, you're not deliberating to a decision, you're just trying to learn. What you don't want to do is take a position. In other words, you're there to gather information. You don't want to go and they say, well, we're thinking of, I don't know, putting in a 4-lane highway, and you say, no, I would never support a 4-lane highway there. You're there to gather information, to ask questions, to learn about the process of whatever they're going to do. You're not there to deliberate towards a decision.
Great, thank you, John.
You're welcome.
I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Stapleton.
Yeah, I have a question. So this is the Virginia Street Corridor study, right?
Right.
So what's the difference between a study and a plan? And out of this, I see there's these options, and is there a decision-making process that happens in this in terms of what will determine what the final improvement is? How does that work, and which is what?
That's a great question. And this is a planning level study. So we'll develop a design concept. The next phase, the RTC board would adopt that. So we would select one of the scenarios for each of these sections, and that would be approved by the RTC board. The next phase would be design and engineering, because we want to make sure that this would be eligible for federal funding. So we'd do either an EA or a CE and the preliminary engineering. And so you get down to the next level of refinement, getting into a lot of detail in terms of how it would fit on the ground with your aerials, and we'd do surveys and things of that sort. So it would get more refined at that point, and then your final design is the last stage where everything is basically in place, which is it's usually about a year for the environmental and the PE. So this is establishing the concept, and then that is continued to be refined over time. And RTC does have funding in the our 5-year plan for the Midtown reconstruction and the UNR reconstruction in the 2017-2018 timeframe.
A follow-up? Commissioner Stapleton, so the way you just described it makes me think, well, if we do all this work and choose one of the options and then go looking for funding and there's no funding, then that seems like maybe putting the cart before the horse. So, but it's probably not like that, right? So what you just said makes me think, okay, well, you have funding set aside for the Midtown and the university parts, and then the rest. I mean, is it sort of like you just how certain is the funding?
Well, we do our best shot at projecting what revenues are going to be, 2 and 3 years out, actually 20 years out when we do our regional transportation plan. Unexpected things do happen, certainly at the federal level. We anticipate that we'll have essentially the same level of funding for each of the categories that we receive. That could not be the case. We just make our best estimate, and it's the most reasonable information that we have. And then our other source is our local fuel tax, which we also project out. So we anticipate that we would have funding for this project by 2018.
Commissioner Reno.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Question: I really like option Midtown option 2, and I just wonder, could we make the lanes a little smaller? I know option 3 shows a 4-foot bike lane, and option 2 shows a 5-foot. Could we make that a 4-foot with a bigger sidewalk? I think that's the point of these TOD corridors, is to have more people down there, more bigger sidewalks, and possibly if you kind of make a combination of the two, I think you need to have the center turning lane for safety and so forth. But I worry that you got 5 feet plus 18 inches in the gutter pan, somebody will park If you make it a little smaller, they won't park there. So that's my only comment.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, question? Has there been any studies about a shared use of bike lane and a bus lane, kind of like you talked about down south, even not where there's 6 lanes, but even in a tighter spaces?
There has been some research on that and a few successful examples where it's been done in other places. You want to have at least your 11-foot lane there so that you have plenty of room. And I can certainly bring that back or send to Claudia some examples of, design guidelines where that's been implemented.
That's okay. I just wanted to see if there was studies and if they were successful. And just, knowing that the bus usage is only there a small percentage of the time, whereas, the bicycles could be using it a large amount of the time. But when you do have that time when they do cross, then there is enough space for them to safely pass. So great. There have been successful cases, which thing. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Commissioner Stapleton. I just have one last comment. I wanted to follow on what Commissioner Reno said. I also think that option 2 is great in the Midtown. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, Amy.
Thank
Great
you.
presentation. We've had 2 of the items on our agenda postponed, LDC 1400015. Claudia, when's that coming back to us, do we know?
Claudia Hansen, Planning and Engineering Manager. Both cases are coming back November 7th. And I'm sorry. They will both be renoticed. The Todd Corridor is coming back November 7th. I'm not sure on the date on the Southeast Connector, but they will both be renoticed.
Okay. And so LDC 14-0001, the master plan amendment, that's also been postponed.
Yes.
Okay. And so, I guess you're up there for TXT 14-0001's the stay on the medical marijuana establishments.
Thank you. Once again, Claudia Hansen, Planning and Engineering Manager. As you mentioned, before you is a request for a text amendment for a stay on medical marijuana applications related to land use applications. As you know, under federal law, it's illegal to manufacture, possess, sell, and or distribute marijuana. Under the state law, however, the use of medical marijuana is permitted. During the 2013 Nevada legislative session, the legislature passed legislation allowing for the operation of medical marijuana establishments. City Council passed a resolution directing staff not to accept any applications related to medical marijuana establishments. City Council directed staff to bring forth a text amendment to Title 18 to place a stay on the acceptance of business license amendment to Title 18 to have a stay on land use applications related to medical marijuana establishments. This allows for the Health Division in the Nevada Department of Health and Human Services to adopt regulations related to the certification of medical marijuana establishments. They have until April of 2014 to establish that criteria. And so until the state finishes setting out their regulations, specifically the Health Division, City Council has requested that staff bring forward this text amendment to put a stay on applications until those regulations are in place, just to a kind of wait and see to see what the state does before we bring forward any regulation in our ordinance. With me tonight also is Megan Salcido from the City Manager's Office, if you have any historical or detailed questions on this, and we're available for questions at any time.
Okay. Thank you. I'll now open public comment. Did you want to? Okay. Okay. I'll open public comments, and it's Rebecca
Gasca.
Gasca.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Rebecca Gasca, CEO of Pistol and Stigma Community and Government Relations Firm. And I've been working on drug policy for about 5.5 years at the state, local, and federal level. And so this issue is one that I have a lot of particular insight. My firm worked on SB 374, the bill that has put forward a state-based regulatory framework allowing for medical marijuana dispensaries, of course, based on our constitutional amendment that's been standing in the state of Nevada for about a dozen years. And the staff report was pretty thorough, and I just wanted to follow up on a piece of information that that wasn't in there, because following the Department of Justice memo, there was actually a federal Senate hearing that Senator Leahy convened. And for you, I've kind of detailed some of the really important points there. And while, yes, marijuana is currently, it's currently listed as a Schedule I substance under federal law, there have been obviously a lot of movement at the state base for many years now in order for states to kind of bring forward their own position. There are about 20 jurisdictions now in the nation that allow for medical use of marijuana. Colorado and Washington have legalized. And so that's kind of what pushed the DOJ to issue this new memo and Senator Leahy to convene this hearing. And so I think there's some important pieces of information here, especially as it relates to local jurisdictions and their participation in this. And really what we found was that DOJ is increasing in their comfort with respect to states moving forward with marijuana-related laws. And they've made it clear some of the issues that they will find problematic and other areas that they will keep their hands off. And so I represent a group of interests who are very excited about this new direction and this clarification, and I want to state on the record that all of the federal points that's listed and kind of in the first bullet list are very important priorities for the businesses who are looking to open up across the state here, because this signals sort of federal participation and safety mechanisms. Basically, you've got businesses that are looking to open and provide patients with their medicine, but this is an investment of millions and millions of dollars. And so businesses are really looking forward to the local jurisdictions participating, making sure that what's appropriate for you and your community is going to be appropriate under the state guidelines. And so it's important as you move forward to know that that the businesses that are looking to operate here are looking forward to your leadership. But it's also important to understand that while the law does require DHHS, the department, to promulgate those regulations by April 1, they actually anticipate doing that much before that. Megan's definitely been involved in the process. There are a lot of people participating. State has already hosted 4 workshops. There will be a formal one next week. The Board of Health is anticipating voting on this in December, with the Legislative Commission to approve it in January, which gives your local jurisdiction about 3 or 4 months in order to get on board, because state is anticipating opening up that application process on April 1, provided that everything goes well. I know it's not possible for you to make your decisions based on total trust with DHHS that everything will go well, but I just wanted to paint that timeline for you. So in hopes that if that does go well, that we're able to come back and you guys are able to lift this stay, should you approve it tonight, so that that the city is prepared to accept those applications in parallel as required under 374 with the state.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, do I have anybody else in the audience that wants to make a public comment? None. I'll close public comments. Take it back to the commissioners for questions. Commissioner Weisky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for staff. Can you give us a definition of stay? This is the first time I've seen a request for a stay come before us.
So a stay is, it's not a moratorium. A moratorium is for a specific amount of time, and it's just kind of a ban on it altogether for a specific amount of time to accomplish a certain amount of research or something like that. A stay is we are just not going to act on it at this time. So if somebody comes forward with an application, we will not accept the application.
Thanks, Claudia.
You're welcome.
Megan Salcido, Government Affairs Coordinator for the record. And just to clarify why the direction was taken for a stay instead of a moratorium, as was mentioned by Claudia and in public comment, a lot of the factors are outside of the city's control as far as getting regulations into place, the federal dialogue happening at the federal level. And so putting an artificial timeline on something where the factors are outside of our control didn't seem advisable. And so the stay allows the council to reconsider this at any time. So if the health division is to finish their regulations before April 1st, there wouldn't be some sort of deadline that we had to wait to pass to come back. So that's the thinking for that method.
Thank you. No further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Stapleton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a question for staff. So, so a stay is no action, a moratorium is that it's banned. Is that the difference?
A moratorium is more for a specific amount of time. So as Megan mentioned, we would say, hypothetically, you said we would have a moratorium until February 10th. And the state comes back, the health division comes back, and they finish their regulations in December. The stay is, we can come in and it's easier to remove the stay, where the moratorium is typically you keep it for that amount of time. It expires on, in my example, February 10th. We may need more than that, we may need less than that. The stay is a cleaner way to keep it open-ended until the time that council is comfortable to lift that and come back and reconsider it one way or the other.
Okay, so it would take council action for either to lift a moratorium or to lift the stay. But
Yes, either one would. Well, no, a moratorium could expire. You can set an expiration date on a moratorium. A stay is we are not accepting applications until there is a
indefinitely.
further action by council to allow them.
Okay. So is the stay then more flexible?
It's different. I guess it's more flexible.
Okay.
It's a moratorium has a specific expiration date.
Okay.
And it goes away at that point. A stay is in place until further action is taken.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Woosley.
question for staff? Either one. With Vegas, the city of Las Vegas, putting a 6-month moratorium on there, that gives time then to come back and for city council then to address it before that April 1st of 2014. With the city of Reno, is there a certain amount of months that they are required to come back, or can they come back the month before April 1st, or any decision before April 1st is acceptable?
Megan Salcido for the record. Staff can bring an item back at any time if the state health division finishes their process before the April 1st deadline. We can come back to council and say, this has been resolved sooner than we thought and we're bringing it back to you now. At the council meeting, the council gave us direction to come back no later than the second meeting in April. So we are set to come back at that point in time just to give them an update on how the regulation process went, and then they can decide what action they want to take at that point in time.
So the health department does not need more time than that beforehand to deal with whatever the decision is, or to have time before that April 1st deadline?
The state health division?
Yes.
The April 1st deadline is for the state health division to pass their regulations by that date. So that's kind of their end point, but they can finish ahead of that time if their process goes smoothly enough. But the law requires them to be done at that point in time. So if they finish in December, then great, we can come back and address our issues at that point. But they have up until April 1st to get their process complete.
So just trying to understand the timing on this. So the city wants to see how things progress during that time frame?
That is correct. The council preferred the approach to see what the regulations look like coming from the health division before the city council takes its action, because until such time as we know what those regulations look like, it's unclear to the council what kind of ordinances they need to pass if they decide to move forward to implement the law.
Okay, thanks. I guess I was assuming they wouldn't hear anything until after April 1st, but that's not the case. They will hear updates on how things are going.
If the State Health Division is finished before April 1st, then it's possible the council will hear an update prior to then. But if the State Health Division takes up until April 1st, then we will come back to council second meeting in April.
Okay, thank you.
I can add
Connor,
something
sure.
on that also, just back on the difference between the moratorium and the stay. If, for example, the health division takes until April 1st, and our moratorium is until April 2nd, we won't have enough time to put the city regulations in place. So the stay gives us that extension till we're ready to lift it. So if the moratorium, whenever the moratorium ends, applications in theory could be applied for. If we don't have our regulations in place, we won't be protected by our own ordinance. So that stay extends it till the city is ready to lift it.
Can the stay be indefinite?
It can.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Thank you.
Commissioner Reno.
Quick question, maybe for legal. Because of Dylan's law, are we required to put medical marijuana establishments in Reno? Is it required that we have to accommodate that? Okay.
Megan
Ma-
Salcido for record. There is no requirement in state law that the city council must
Except these. So
so
we could be a dry city, I guess, is what I'm saying. We could just say, forget it, no establishments in the city of Reno.
That is a decision that it will be left to the city council to make
Okay.
that policy decision.
Okay, I just want to make that clear, because it's, I mean, reading all this, it's still a Schedule I controlled substance, and it's illegal, and you know, we're
But
kind of
Mr.
stepping
Chairman,
into it.
a point of order, alls we're discussing is a stay right now, which doesn't allow anybody in the city to do anything. So, and it's open-ended. So therefore, whether it's a Class 1 or a Class 2 or a Class 3, it doesn't make any difference. It's not allowing the city to take a position in any direction with the stay.
The reason I'm asking these questions is because we have to make the findings, and finding A is to promote the public health, safety, and this one's interesting, the morals, convenience, and general welfare. So I wonder, I mean, if morals, let's take that one, we're breaking the law, right? I mean, the question is, if we put up these establishments, isn't that breaking federal law? And so that's one of the findings we have to make. And so, I mean, I think it's a general question is, are we required to have them in Reno? And it sounds like we are not.
That is correct. Reno is not required to have these establishments.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Stapleton.
Aren't both of those points actually up to interpretation? Whether the local government can preempt the state law, and also whether the state law can preempt the federal law? And I mean, I've had to research this just on my own for work in a separate capacity, and there's legal opinions on both sides, whether,
That's what I was curious about. You know,
so I think,
are we going to be forced
I don't
to
want
do
to
it?
contradict staff.
No, this
But
makes
isn't
it, it's a very
isn't it-
complicated
but
issue.
Isn't it up
and-
to isn't it up to interpretation at this point, and there hasn't been, you know, a court case that has decided definitively on either?
That's correct. It's a very complicated issue. It's a fluid issue. There's debate and conversation going on at the federal level. There's conversations going on at the state level. It's a complex issue, and this stay allows staff to do thorough research and analysis, and the council to do their own research and analysis to come to a decision on the complex questions that are involved with this issue.
And to further address your question, the only thing in front of you tonight is the stay.
Okay, yeah, no, I
So
understand.
you actually shouldn't probably discuss those future
Okay.
decisions, but tonight is just the stay.
Commissioner Olivas, I guess one follow-on question to Commissioner Woosley's is, but basically it seems like the moratorium would actually be more flexible and in accordance with the desires, because the stay could become indefinite, whereas the council could remove a moratorium. Is that not accurate? They could remove a
The
moratorium.
moratorium expires.
It
So a
expires,
moratorium has a set date, so it would be
but could it be
January
removed?
15th or whatever it is.
Could it be removed before the expiration date?
It could be. You could run another ordinance to remove the moratorium. The stay, moratorium would not protect us if we needed it beyond that date. So
Or-
it gets more
Yeah.
challenging to extend a moratorium
Okay, that's what I was
legally.
just going to ask. A new one could be put in place, or,
But every time you establish a moratorium, you have to defend the reason for the time extension. So you have to prove, you have to justify what you've done so far and what you're planning to do in the next 6 months or whatever your extension is on the moratorium. The stay just shuts it all down until we're ready.
okay, I guess my kind of thoughts go to that could somehow, without justification for not removing it, could also keep it in place permanently also, so.
Either
I
one can be
guess-
shortened, so moratorium could be shortened, a stay can be lifted through an ordinance again. But the moratorium is more challenging to extend. And so we wouldn't be as protected if we're trying to extend it out however long we need to.
Okay.
Megan Salcido again, and if I might just add, a moratorium, I think, is most appropriate when the factors are within your own control. So if Claudia needed more time to draft a specific ordinance, and she could say this will take 3 months, and then you know that the moratorium in 3 months will be sufficient. In our case, there's the federal dialogue that's going on, there's the state health division that's passing their regulations, and so that's outside of our control, and so the stay gives us more flexibility to just allow that to work itself out, and then as such time as that all is resolved, we can come back and council can make its decision at that point in time.
Okay, I guess my point is that without proactive action, a stay could kill this permanently.
That's a
Claudia?
statement, not a question.
Yes, that's a statement.
That's going to be a policy decision by city council.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have another question, but I'll start comment or discussion if you're ready, if nobody else has a question. I agree with Commissioner Reno's discussion and point that he was making for asking the questions, because I had the same issues until I learned what the stay was and why it is. And when I make the findings, not when we make the findings, when I make the findings, the stay allows me to make the findings for the very reasons that Commissioner Reno was asking his questions. It does not put me in a position where I can't make findings because of morals, because of ethics, because of laws, federal laws, state laws, that type of thing. If our city leadership at the time, whatever time that is, be it 30 days from now or 300 days from now or 3,000 days from now, looks at what legislation has been approved and what health department is put together, and city leadership decides that we're a dry community, or that they suggest and recommend to a planning commission at that time that we prepare for medical marijuana and its use, and it's proven to be legal, then the stay gets removed, and the planning commission starts to do its job by deciding where and when and how the community is best served in location by dispensaries. So because of that, and because of the definition of the stay and how it's being applied and recommended for use, I can make the findings tonight, and I'll be supporting the proposed motion.
Chairman.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Reno, yeah, I agree. The stay, I can make the motion for the stay. I totally agree that is, I mean, that's what we're here tonight, is to make the motion to extend this. That's not the problem. And I'm sure this will come back before us to remove the stay, I assume. So, yeah, I can make the findings to have the stay.
Commissioner Woosley?
I agree. At this time, I'm keeping with what's in front of us, and I can support this as it is presented. Thank you.
Commissioner Stapleton.
In general, I agree with the other commissioners. I can make the findings. I did, just to follow on Commissioner Olivas's point, though, I do think that in some ways this can be, the stay seems less flexible because it seems like it could be essentially in practice an indefinite moratorium, though it might be, you know, a little bit more work to keep reenacting moratorium. I think I personally would have preferred a moratorium, but I can make the findings for this.
Commissioner Olivas.
Yeah, I guess I can make all the findings too. It's,
Mr. Chairman, if you're ready for a motion, I'll be glad to make it.
Commissioner Weisky.
Thank you. In the case of TXT 14-00001, stay of medical marijuana applications, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to recommend that City Council approve the text amendment by ordinance, and I can make all of the findings.
Have a motion?
I'll second that. Commissioner Reno. I can make all the findings.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So 6-0. Okay, we have Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Liaison Report. We have a meeting since the last, Commissioner Weisky? So there's none. Staff announcements?
I don't have any tonight.
So report on status of the planning division projects, nothing? Any of those four? Commissioner's suggestion for future agenda items for possible action? Hearing none. Public comments, this is public comment items. Allow the public to provide general public comments and not for comments on individual action items contained on this agenda.
Well, I can make it not applicable. That's quite fine.
Okay, you're going to have to fill out another form,
Oh,
please. Oh, you can do it after you speak.
okay.
Rebecca, thanks.
Thank you again. Rebecca Gasca, CEO of Pistol and Stigma. Just generally, I hope to be a resource as the community moves forward. I appreciate your careful consideration of the agenda item tonight. And generally, as an informational, for informational purposes about SB 374, the state bill, there are some really interesting planning-related issues in terms of limitations on where dispensaries can or cannot operate. So in the future, if the state is lifted, once it's put in place completely, I would invite you to take a look at that because they're very, very strict federal guidelines that limit that placement anywhere near schools, and the state law was very specific about its placement near churches, synagogues, public parks. You know, so there are very, very finite and limited number of places in which dispensaries could even operate, or any established medical marijuana related establishment could even operate within the city's scope in general. And the law is very thoughtful about that. So as that pertains to your duties in the future, I do invite you to take a look at that. And of course, I'm here as a resource for you and would love to meet with any of you individually to talk to you about any of your thoughts or concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. And if no more comments, close public comments. Motion to adjourn. I have a motion, a second. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.